They said humans were too violent, too primitive, too unpredictable to be trusted with real power in the galactic community. For 3 centuries, the Terran Federation had been kept at arm's length, granted observer status, but never full membership in the Galactic Council. The aliens had their reasons, they claimed. Humans started too many wars. Humans asked too many questions. Humans refused to follow the established order that had kept peace for millennia. But when the Devourers came from the dark void between galaxies, when entire star systems went silent in mere hours, when the most advanced civilizations in known space found their weapons useless and their defenses crumbling like paper, suddenly, being too violent didn't seem like such a terrible thing. The distress signal that reached Earth was unprecedented. Not a request, not a diplomatic overture, a desperate, pride-shattered plea from beings who had never before acknowledged humanity as equals. Please, we are dying. Send help. Send anyone. Send your warriors. What emerged from the smoke and chaos that followed would forever change how the galaxy viewed the species they had so carefully kept in the shadows. Because sometimes, when civilization faces annihilation, you don't need diplomats or philosophers or careful bureaucrats. Sometimes, you need monsters to fight monsters. And humanity had been training monsters for a very long time. The crystalline chambers of the Galactic Council had never witnessed such chaos. Ambassador Zethkri of the Altarian Collective stood before the emergency assembly, her usual composure shattered like the homeworld she represented. Her 4 arms trembled as she gestured toward the holographic display showing the latest casualty reports. 17 systems, she announced, her voice breaking across 3 harmonic frequencies. 17 systems in the last 72 standard hours. No survivors. No reiki. No trace except the electromagnetic signatures that tell us the Devourers have consumed everything. The assembled representatives of 47 species shifted uneasily in their environmental pods. The Zephyrians' atmospheric chambers hissed with agitation. The silicon-based architects clicked their mineral forms against their containment units. Even the usually stoic keepers of Andromeda showed signs of distress through their bioluminescent displays. High Counselor Vexran of the Hegemony Prime leaned forward from his elevated platform. His ancient form, sustained by technology older than human civilization, commanded attention even in this moment of crisis. What the 4th Fleet? Our most advanced battleships were stationed in the Kepler Nebula. Surely they've engaged the enemy. Ambassador Zethkri's chromatic skin shifted to deep purple, the color of mourning among her people. Gone. High Counselor. All of them. The last transmission we received was Admiral Keftar reporting that their quantum disruptors and plasma cannons had no effect whatsoever. The Devourers simply absorbed everything. Ships, energy, crew. They left nothing behind but empty space. A collective shudder ran through the assembly. These were civilizations that had mastered faster-than-light travel while Earth's dominant species was still discovering fire. They had weapons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand the fury of dying stars. The concept of utter technological helplessness was foreign to them. What are we dealing with exactly? Asked Representative Mordun of the Traders Consortium, his tentacles writhing with nervous energy. Our xenobiologists have studied the initial reports. The Devourers appear to be a collective consciousness, but unlike anything in our databases. They don't seem to be from our galaxy at all. Zethkri activated another section of the holographic display. The image showed what appeared to be a massive organic structure, easily the size of a small moon, drifting through space. Its surface pulsed with sickly bioluminescent glow, and smaller entities could be seen swarming around it like antibodies around an infection. The scientists at the Proxima Institute believe they originated in the void between galaxies, she explained. They appear to feed on complex energy patterns, the kind generated by advanced civilizations. Our technology, our cities, our life force itself. They don't destroy planets so much as drain them completely. What's left behind isn't even suitable for basic terraforming. High Counselor Vexran's ancient features showed the strain of processing this information. In his 3,000 years of life, he had overseen countless crises. The Zephyrian Rebellion, the Architect Wars, the Void Plague that had sterilized 6 systems before a cure was found. But this was different. This threatened the very foundation of everything they had built. "Have we attempted diplomatic contact?" he asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Every method we know," Zethkri replied. "Quantum entanglement messaging, pheromone translation matrices, mathematical progression sequences, even primitive radio waves. They either cannot or will not respond to any form of communication. They simply arrive, consume, and move on." The chamber fell silent except for the ambient sounds of 47 different life support systems. Representatives who had spent centuries debating trade routes and territorial disputes now faced a threat that made such concerns irrelevant. If the Devourers continued their advance, there would be no trade routes left to negotiate. Representative Yilnara of the Peaceful Worlds Coalition activated her speaking platform. Her species had long ago evolved beyond physical conflict, developing neural capabilities that made violence literally impossible for them. "Perhaps we should consider evacuation protocols. If we cannot fight them, we must preserve what we can. Begin moving populations to the furthest galactic rim, establish seed colonies beyond their apparent range, and abandon how many billions?" Zethkri's voice carried both desperation and anger. "My people, the humans on Earth, the collective consciousnesses of the inner worlds. We're talking about sacrificing 3/4 of known civilization to save the remainder." The mention of Earth sent a subtle ripple through the assembly. The human homeworld occupied a unique position in galactic politics, significant enough to warrant observer status, primitive enough to be kept at arm's length. Most council members viewed humanity as an interesting anthropological study, a species with potential that might be safely integrated into galactic society in another few centuries. The humans, mused Counselor Dexera of the military caste worlds. Their psychological profiles indicate an unusual tolerance for conflict. Perhaps they could provide insight into combating an apparently hostile force. High Counselor Vexran made a gesture of dismissal. The humans barely possess faster-than-light capability. Their most advanced weapons will be considered museum pieces by our standards. What could they possibly offer in a situation where our finest military minds have failed? But even as he spoke, Zethkri was accessing classified files from the Terran observation posts. The data that scrolled past her private display painted a picture that the Galactic Council had long chosen to ignore. Humanity's history was a continuous tapestry of warfare, certainly, but it was also a testament to adaptation and innovation under pressure. While other species had evolved in relatively stable environments, humans had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, and the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They had developed technology through constant conflict, creating increasingly sophisticated methods of warfare out of necessity rather than curiosity. More intriguingly, their military doctrine emphasized flexibility and improvisation over reliance on superior technology. Human military history was filled with examples of technologically inferior forces defeating superior ones through cunning, determination, and sheer bloody-minded refusal to accept defeat. "High Counselor," Zethkri said slowly, her voice taking on a tone that commanded attention. "With respect, I believe we may be approaching this from the wrong perspective. We've been trying to solve this problem using the same methods that have served us for millennia. Advanced technology, diplomatic protocols, strategic withdrawal. But the Devourers represent something completely outside our experience." She paused, accessing more files, her expression growing more thoughtful. "The humans have a saying, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Perhaps we've been hammers for so long that we've forgotten there are problems that require different tools." Representative Mordunn's tentacles stopped writhing. "What are you suggesting?" I'm suggesting that maybe we need to ask for help from a species that specializes in finding unconventional solutions to impossible problems. A species that has survived and thrived despite lacking the advantages we take for granted. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of protests and objections. The idea of asking the humans for help was unprecedented, potentially humiliating, and definitely against established protocols. But underneath the noise, several representatives were quietly accessing their own files on human military history. High Counselor Vexran raised his hand for silence. When the chamber quieted, his voice carried the weight of ultimate authority. Ambassador Zeth Kree, you are seriously suggesting that we, representing the most advanced civilizations in known space, request military assistance from species we have classified as developing with caution? I'm suggesting that we request assistance from a species that has never encountered a problem they couldn't either solve or adapt to, she replied firmly. Our survival strategies are based on overwhelming technological superiority. Theirs are based on improvisation, adaptation, and refusing to accept defeat. Given that overwhelming technological superiority has proven ineffective against the Devourers, perhaps it's time to try a different approach. The debate that followed would be remembered as one of the shortest in Galactic Council history. Not because consensus was reached quickly, but because another priority alert interrupted the proceedings. The Devourers had just consumed the Rigel system, including 3 major research facilities and the most advanced military academy in the Outer Rim. The silence that followed this announcement was deafening. These were civilizations that measured time in geological epochs, making decisions with careful deliberation across decades, or even centuries. But the reality was becoming undeniable. They no longer had the luxury of time. High Counselor Vexran's voice, when he finally spoke, carried the exhaustion of someone making a decision they never thought they would face. Very well. Ambassador Zeth Kree, you are authorized to make contact with the Terran Federation, explain our situation, and request whatever assistance they can provide. What exactly should I tell them we need? Zeth Kree asked. The High Counselor looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of 47 species, each one more technologically advanced than humanity, each one now looking to their primitive neighbors for salvation. Tell them we need their warriors. The message reached Earth through channels that hadn't been used in over 50 years. Emergency diplomatic frequencies, broadcasting on wavelengths that predated humanity's full membership application to the Galactic Council. The transmission carried the highest priority codes known to interstellar law, and when it arrived at the Terran Federation headquarters in Geneva, it caused the kind of controlled chaos that only comes with genuine emergencies. President Elena Vasquez stood in the Situation Room, surrounded by holographic displays showing star charts, military deployments, and diplomatic communications. The woman who had led humanity through 3 major political crises and 2 minor wars had never seen anything quite like the message scrolling across the central screen. Read it again, she ordered her chief of staff. Director James Morrison, a man whose calm demeanor had seen the Federation through countless diplomatic storms, cleared his throat before speaking. Priority 1 transmission from Galactic Council Ambassador Zeth Kree of the Altarian Collective. Quote, the Galactic Council formally requests immediate military assistance from the Terran Federation. An extragalactic threat designated as Devourers has destroyed 17 star systems. Conventional weapons and defensive measures have proven completely ineffective. We require unconventional warfare specialists and strategic combat advisors. Time is critically limited. Please respond with available military assets. End quote. Defense Minister Sarah Chun, whose small frame concealed one of the sharpest military minds in human space, leaned back in her chair. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. The same Galactic Council that has spent 3 centuries telling us we're too primitive and violent to join their little club is now asking us to send our military to save them. That appears to be an accurate assessment, Morrison replied dryly. President Vasquez moved to the central holographic display, manipulating the controls to show the galactic map. Red zones marked the consumed systems, and the pattern of destruction was clear even to civilian eyes. The Devourers were moving in a systematic spiral, consuming everything in their path as they headed toward the galactic core. "What do our xenobiology experts say about these Devourers?" she asked. Dr. Marcus Webb, head of the Federation's Alien Studies Department, activated his workstation. "Based on the limited data the Council provided, we're looking at something completely outside normal evolutionary parameters. They appear to be a collective consciousness that feeds on complex energy patterns. What makes them particularly dangerous is that they seem to adapt to whatever they encounter." He manipulated the display to show a tactical analysis. Every engagement the Galactic Council forces have attempted has resulted in complete annihilation. The Devourers don't just defeat enemy forces, they absorb them entirely. Ships, energy weapons, defensive systems, even the crew members themselves. It's as if they're studying and incorporating everything they consume. Admiral Zhang Wei, commander of the Terran Space Forces, had been quietly reviewing military deployment options during the briefing. Now he spoke up, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 40 years thinking about interstellar combat scenarios. "Madam President, if these Devourers are adapting to standard galactic military doctrine, that actually gives us a potential advantage. Our weapons, tactics, and strategic thinking are completely different from anything they've encountered." Minister Chen nodded in agreement. The Council species fight wars like chess matches, methodical, technological, based on overwhelming force and predetermined strategies. Humans fight wars like humans. We improvise, we adapt, we use whatever works regardless of how unconventional it might seem. President Vasquez studied the tactical displays, her mind racing through the implications. "What kind of military assets are we talking about deploying?" Admiral Zhang activated another section of the holographic display. "The good news is that we've been preparing for exactly this kind of scenario for decades. Not specifically extragalactic invaders, but the possibility of conflict with technologically superior forces. Our doctrine has always emphasized mobility, adaptability, and asymmetric warfare." The display showed the current deployment of human military forces throughout Terran space. Unlike the massive, heavily armed battle stations favored by other species, human military assets were distributed among hundreds of smaller, more maneuverable ships. "Our carrier groups are built around the concept of force projection and rapid response," Jean continued. "Each carrier deploys multiple squadrons of fighters and bombers, supported by frigate escorts and marine assault ships. More importantly, every ship in our fleet is designed to operate independently if necessary." Dr. Webb looked up from his analysis. "Admiral, based on what we know about Devourer capabilities, conventional ship-to-ship combat may be suicide. They've absorbed everything the Council has thrown at them, including weapons that our technology can't match. Which is exactly why we're not going to fight them conventionally." Admiral Zhang replied with a slight smile. "Dr. Webb, you said these entities adapt to what they encounter, correct? What happens when they encounter something completely unpredictable?" Defense Minister Chun was already accessing deployment records. "Admiral, are you thinking what I think you're thinking? The Marines, Minister. Specifically, the Interplanetary Assault Marines. If these Devourers are expecting ship-to-ship combat and technological warfare, they're not prepared for close-quarters combat specialists." President Vasquez looked between her military advisors. "Explain." Admiral Zhang manipulated the display to show detailed schematics of marine assault ships and equipment. "Madam President, the Council species have been fighting clean, technological wars for millennia. Energy weapons, computer-guided targeting systems, battles fought at distances measured in light minutes. They've probably never seen anything like human Marines in action." The display showed footage from recent training exercises, Marines in powered armor dropping from low orbit, engaging in brutal close-quarters combat, using weapons that would be considered primitive by galactic standards, but were devastatingly effective in the right circumstances. Our Marines train for environments where technology fails, Zhang continued. They're equipped with projectile weapons, explosive devices, and tactical nuclear weapons that don't depend on the kind of energy systems these devourers seem to absorb. More importantly, they're trained to think independently, adapt to changing conditions, and accomplish their missions regardless of casualties. Dr. Webb studied the footage with growing interest. You're suggesting that we fight a technologically superior enemy by using inferior technology? I'm suggesting that we fight an enemy that's adapted to absorbing advanced technology by using weapons and tactics they've never encountered before, Zhang corrected. Kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives, direct physical assault. Methods so primitive that they might not even register as threats until it's too late. President Vasquez moved to her command chair, her decision-making process entering the final phase. What kind of forces are we talking about deploying? 3 full Marine Expeditionary Forces, Admiral Zhang replied immediately. Approximately 30,000 Marines, supported by carrier air wings and assault fleet elements. General Morrison's 1st MEF is currently conducting training exercises in the Titan system. They could be ready for deployment within 72 hours. Minister Chen accessed personnel records. Madam President, I should point out that this would represent the largest human military deployment in our species' history. We'd be committing almost half our available Marine forces to what is essentially an unknown combat environment, against an enemy that has already proven capable of destroying the most advanced military forces in known space, Morrison added quietly. The Situation Room fell silent as President Vasquez considered the implications. The political ramifications alone were staggering. If humanity succeeded in stopping the Devourers, it would forever change Earth's relationship with the Galactic Council. If they failed, it could mean the extinction of human civilization along with everyone else. But there was another factor that weighed heavily in her calculations. For 3 centuries, humanity had been told they were too primitive, too violent, too unpredictable to be trusted with full membership in galactic society. Now, that same primitive violence might be the galaxy's only hope for survival. Admiral Zhang, she said finally, how quickly can we get a response to the Council? Communications can be transmitted immediately, Madam President. If we commit to deployment, the first Marine units could be on their way within 6 hours. President Vasquez stood and moved to the communication console. Open a channel to the Galactic Council. Ambassador Zeth Kree specifically. The holographic display shifted to show the communication interface. Within moments, the alien ambassador appeared, her chromatic skin showing the stress patterns that indicated extreme fatigue. Ambassador Zeth Kree. President Vasquez began, her voice carrying the authority of someone speaking for an entire species. We have received your request for military assistance. The Terran Federation is prepared to deploy significant military assets to combat this threat. The alien ambassador's relief was visible even across species barriers. President Vasquez, I cannot adequately express the Council's gratitude. What forces can you commit? 30,000 interplanetary assault Marines, supported by carrier battle groups and assault fleet elements. However, I need you to understand something about human military doctrine. Our Marines don't fight the same way your people do. They're trained for close combat, direct assault, and what we call unconventional warfare. The methods they employ may seem primitive or brutal compared to standard galactic military practice. Ambassador Zeth Kree's chromatic patterns shifted to what human xenobiologists had learned to recognize as determined resolve. President Vasquez, at this point we are willing to try anything. Our most advanced weapons have proven useless. Perhaps primitive methods will succeed where sophisticated ones have failed. President Vasquez nodded to Admiral Zhang, who stepped forward. Ambassador, our Marines specialize in situations where conventional tactics fail. But I need to be clear about something. When humans go to war, we go to war. We don't conduct limited engagements or surgical strikes. We identify the enemy, and we destroy them completely. Are you prepared for that level of response? The alien ambassador was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. Finally, she spoke, her voice carrying the weight of a species facing extinction. Admiral, the Devourers have consumed 17 star systems and billions of sentient beings. If your Marines can stop them, we're prepared for whatever methods they deem necessary. President Vasquez exchanged glances with her military advisors. The decision that would shape the future of human galactic relations had just been made. Very well, Ambassador. We'll coordinate deployment details through standard military channels. But understand this, once our Marines deploy, they'll be operating under human military command and human rules of engagement. Are you prepared to trust us with that level of operational independence? President Vasquez, Ambassador Zethkri replied, her voice barely concealing desperate hope. At this point, you may be our only hope. We're prepared to trust you completely. As the communication ended, President Vasquez turned to her staff. Admiral Zhang, begin immediate deployment preparations. Minister Chun, I want full psychological and tactical profiles of these Devourers prepared for Marine Command. Dr. Webb, coordinate with our xenobiology experts to provide whatever intelligence we can gather. She paused, looking around the room at the people who would be implementing humanity's first major interstellar military deployment. And someone get me General Morrison on priority communication. It's time to show the galaxy what human Marines can do. The TFS Leviathan hung in space like a metallic mountain, its massive bulk dwarfing even the largest civilian transports in the Sol system. As the flagship carrier of the Terran Space Forces, it had been designed for one purpose: projecting human military power across interstellar distances. Now, for the first time in its operational history, it was about to fulfill that purpose on a scale its designers had never imagined. General Patricia Morrison stood in the ship's Combat Operations Center, watching as the final elements of her Marine Expeditionary Force completed boarding procedures. Around her, dozens of staff officers coordinated the most complex military deployment in human history, their voices creating a steady background hum of professional efficiency. Morrison herself was a study in controlled intensity. 48 years old, she had spent 3 decades preparing for exactly this kind of scenario. Her Marines called her Iron Pat, with the kind of respectful affection reserved for commanders who led from the front and brought their people home alive. General, final boarding reports are coming in from all transports, reported Colonel James Hendricks, her chief of staff. Total deployment: 28,700 Marines, 1,200 pilots, and 4,000 naval support personnel. All units report full readiness. Morrison nodded, her attention focused on the tactical displays showing the formation of ships spreading out around the Leviathan. 3 full regiments of Marines, supported by fighter squadrons, assault ships, and enough firepower to crack a small moon. By galactic standards, it was a modest force. By human standards, it represented the largest military deployment since the colonization wars. "What's our intelligence situation on the target area?" she asked. Major Lisa Park, the expedition's intelligence officer, activated her workstation. "General, we're operating with limited data. The Galactic Council has provided tactical reports from the 17 systems that were consumed, but their analysis is based on conventional warfare assumptions." The main display shifted to show a 3-dimensional map of the affected region. Red zones marked consumed systems. Yellow zones indicated areas under immediate threat, and a complex web of navigation routes showed how the Devourers were likely to advance. "The pattern suggests they're moving systematically toward the galactic core," Park continued. "Each consumed system becomes a staging area for attacks on adjacent systems. Based on current progression, they'll reach the major population centers within 6 months." Morrison studied the tactical display with the practiced eye of someone who had spent years analyzing enemy movements. "What about their capabilities? I've read the Council reports, but I want your assessment." Major Park manipulated the display to show combat footage from the few encounters that had been recorded before galactic forces were completely eliminated. The images were disturbing. Massive organic structures moving through space with impossible coordination, smaller entities swarming over defensive installations like immune cells attacking an infection. They appear to be a collective consciousness operating through individual units that can range in size from fighter craft to capital ships, Park explained. What makes them particularly dangerous is their adaptation capability. Every weapon system used against them seems to become less effective in subsequent encounters, suggesting they learn from each engagement. Morrison mused. Colonel Hendricks, what's our tactical approach? Hendricks activated another section of the display, showing human military deployment patterns. General, we're implementing Protocol 7, maximum dispersion with independent operational authority. Each regiment will approach the combat zone from different vectors, with battalion-level units maintaining autonomous command capability. Morrison nodded approvingly. Protocol 7 had been developed specifically for combat against technologically superior enemies. Rather than concentrating forces for maximum firepower, it emphasized multiple independent attacks designed to overwhelm enemy adaptation capabilities. The theory is that if these entities adapt to whatever they encounter, we present them with so many different tactical approaches that they can adapt to all of them simultaneously. Hendricks continued. What about specific weapons loadout? Morrison asked. Master Sergeant Robert Stone, the expedition's senior enlisted advisor, stepped forward from his position near the combat displays. Stone was a 26-year veteran whose scarred hands told the story of countless battles fought in training simulations and minor conflicts across human space. General, we've completely revised standard loadout protocols based on what we know about Devour capabilities, Stone reported. Primary weapons are kinetic-based, railguns, Gauss rifles, and conventional projectile systems. Secondary weapons include chemical explosives, thermite charges, and tactical nuclear devices. Morrison raised an eyebrow. No energy weapons at all? Minimal, mom. The Council reports suggest these entities can absorb and redirect energy-based attacks. Our weapons experts believe kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives might be outside their adaptation parameters. The general moved to examine the weapons displays more closely. The equipment looked primitive compared to standard galactic military hardware, but there was something reassuring about its mechanical simplicity. These were weapons that worked based on fundamental physics rather than advanced technology. What about armor and defensive systems? Modified powered armor with enhanced physical protection, Stone continued. Reduced electronic systems, increased physical plating. If these entities can interfere with advanced technology, our Marines need to be able to fight effectively even with system failures. Morrison nodded thoughtfully. The approach was classic human military thinking. Assume everything that could go wrong would go wrong, and prepare accordingly. While other species relied on technological superiority, humans had learned to win wars through adaptability and sheer bloody-minded determination. General Morrison to the bridge. Came the announcement over the ship's communication system. Morrison made her way through the Leviathan's corridors, noting the controlled activity as crew members made final preparations for departure. The ship carried not just military personnel, but the hopes of an entire species. If this mission failed, humanity's relationship with the galactic community would be forever changed. The bridge of the Leviathan was a masterpiece of human engineering, designed for flexibility rather than overwhelming display of power. Captain Maria Rodriguez, the ship's commander, stood at the central command station surrounded by holographic displays showing ship status, navigation data, and communication channels. General, we're receiving final authorization codes from Fleet Command, Rodriguez reported. All escort vessels report ready for hyperspace transition. Morrison moved to stand beside the captain, looking out through the bridge's massive viewing ports at the assembly of ships surrounding them. Carriers, destroyers, assault transports, and support vessels. The largest human battle fleet ever assembled, preparing for humanity's first major interstellar war. Captain, open a fleet-wide communication channel, Morrison ordered. Channel open, General. Morrison activated her personal communicator, knowing that her words would reach every human military personnel in the task force. This is General Morrison. In approximately 1 hour, we will depart for our operational area. I want every person in this fleet to understand what we're facing. She paused, gathering her thoughts. This wasn't a speech for historians or politicians. This was a message for the Marines and sailors who would be implementing humanity's response to an extinction-level threat. 3 centuries ago, our species reached for the stars and found we weren't alone. Since then, we've been told we're too primitive, too violent, too dangerous to be trusted with full membership in galactic society. Today, those same advanced civilizations are asking for our help because their sophisticated weapons and diplomatic protocols have failed. Throughout the fleet, personnel stopped their activities to listen. Marines in transport ships, pilots running final equipment checks, naval officers monitoring ship systems, all focused on the words of the woman who would lead them into the unknown. We're not going out there to prove we deserve a place at the galactic table, Morrison continued. We're going out there because extinction-level threats require extinction-level responses. These devourers have consumed billions of sentient beings across 17 star systems. They represent a threat to everything we value, human and alien alike. She moved to the central command display, looking out at the assembled fleet. Our enemy adapts to conventional tactics, so we won't use conventional tactics. They absorb energy-based weapons, so we'll use kinetic weapons. They expect technological warfare, so we'll give them close combat. They're used to fighting civilizations, so they'll learn what it means to fight Marines. The communication channel carried the subtle sounds of thousands of military personnel preparing for deployment. Weapons being checked, equipment being secured, final systems diagnostics being completed. I won't lie to you about what we're facing, Morrison concluded. The enemy has destroyed every force sent against them. They've proven capable of adapting to the most advanced military technology in known space. But they've never faced humans in combat. They've never encountered an enemy that considers impossible to be a tactical challenge rather than a reason for retreat. She looked around the bridge, seeing her own determination reflected in the faces of the officers and crew members present. Marines adapt and overcome. Sailors navigate the impossible. Together, we're going to show this enemy what happens when they threaten our people and our allies. Morrison closed the communication channel and turned to Captain Rodriguez. Captain, signal the fleet. Begin hyperspace transition on my command. Rodriguez moved to her command station, initiating the sequence that would send the largest human military force in history into interstellar space. Fleet reports ready for transition, General. Morrison took one last look at the tactical displays showing the consumed systems, the projected enemy movements, and the impossible mission they had been assigned. Then, she gave the order that would change the course of galactic history. Execute hyperspace transition. All ships, proceed to operational area. Let's go remind the galaxy why they were afraid of us in the first place. The stars outside the viewing ports began to shift and elongate as the fleet entered hyperspace. Behind them, Earth fell away into the distance. Ahead of them lay an enemy unlike anything humanity had ever faced. But as the Leviathan and its escort vessels disappeared into the swirling energies of hyperspace, one thing was certain. The Devourers were about to learn what it meant to fight a species that had evolved to survive the impossible. The Kepler Nebula had once been one of the most beautiful sights in known space. Swirling clouds of ionized gas, painted in brilliant purples and golds, with new stars being born in the cosmic dust. Now it was a graveyard. The massive hulks of galactic council warships drifted through the nebula like broken monuments to technological superiority, their hulls cracked open and their energy signatures completely dead. General Morrison stood in the Combat Operations Center of the TFS Leviathan, studying the tactical displays with growing unease. The destruction visible on their sensors defied everything she knew about space combat. Ships that should have taken days to destroy had been eliminated so completely that they barely registered as debris. Since her report, she ordered. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim manipulated the detection array displays, her expression grim. General, we're detecting 17 capital shipwrecks, approximately 40 smaller vessels, and what appears to be the remains of a defensive space station. No life signs, no power signatures, no residual energy readings at all. Morrison moved closer to examine the tactical display. The wreckage patterns told a story of systematic annihilation. Ships had been caught while attempting to maintain formation, their weapons still pointed toward an enemy that had apparently overwhelmed them with ease. What about the enemy? Any sign of these devourers? Major Park, working at the intelligence station, looked up from her analysis. General, we're detecting massive organic signatures approximately 3 light hours from our current position. The readings are unusual. The main display shifted to show long-range sensor data. What appeared on screen defied easy categorization. Structures that seemed to be part ship, part organism, moving through space with a coordination that suggested intelligence rather than instinct. Size estimates? Morrison asked. The largest structure appears to be roughly 12 kilometers in length, Park reported. Smaller entities are ranging from fighter-sized up to what we would classify as heavy cruiser displacement. Total count is difficult to determine because they keep moving in and out of sensor range, but we estimate at least 300 individual units. Colonel Hendricks studied the movement patterns with professional interest. General, their formation doesn't match any standard military doctrine I'm familiar with. They're moving like a school of fish or a flock of birds. Coordinated, but organic. Morrison nodded, her mind racing through tactical possibilities. Collective consciousness, remember. They're probably not thinking in terms of individual ships and crews. They're thinking as a single entity with multiple mobile components. She moved to the communication station. Open a channel to all regimental commanders. I want a final status report before we engage. The holographic displays activated, showing the 3 Marine regimental commanders positioned throughout the task force. Colonel Sarah Martinez commanded 1st Regiment from the assault carrier TFS Normandy. Colonel David Chun led 2nd Regiment from the TFS Guadalcanal. Colonel Jennifer Walsh had 3rd Regiment aboard the TFS Tarawa. Regimental status reports, Morrison ordered. Colonel Martinez spoke first, her voice carrying the calm confidence that had made her one of the youngest regimental commanders in Marine history. 1st Regiment ready for immediate deployment. 4,000 Marines across 3 battalions, full equipment load, and comprehensive briefings completed. We're ready to execute Operation Sledgehammer on your order. Operation Sledgehammer was the human tactical plan, simultaneous multi-vector assaults designed to overwhelm enemy adaptation capabilities through sheer variety of approach. Each regiment would attack from different directions using different tactics, preventing the devourers from developing effective countermeasures. Colonel Chun reported next. 2nd Regiment standing by. Our battalions are configured for close assault operations. Heavy weapons, breaching charges, and tactical nuclear devices ready for deployment. The Marines are asking when they get to show these aliens what real combat looks like. Morrison allowed herself a slight smile. Marine confidence was legendary, but in this case it might be exactly what they needed. Fear would be a liability against an enemy that had destroyed every force sent against them. Colonel Walsh concluded the reports. 3rd Regiment ready for orbital assault operations. Dropships loaded, powered armor checked, and double-checked. General, my Marines have been training for this kind of mission their entire careers. We won't let you down. Morrison looked at the tactical display one more time, seeing the alien force moving systematically through the nebula, apparently searching for additional targets to consume. In a few hours, they would discover that this time their targets would be shooting back. Gentlemen, ladies, she began, our mission parameters are simple but unprecedented. We're facing an enemy that has adapted to every conventional tactic used against them. Our advantage is that there's nothing conventional about the way Marines fight. She manipulated the tactical display to show the planned assault vectors. First Regiment will conduct a frontal assault to fix the enemy in position. Second Regiment will execute a flanking maneuver to divide their attention. Third Regiment will conduct orbital drops directly onto their largest structures. The three colonels studied the plan, their professional faces showing no concern about the apparent insanity of dropping Marines directly onto enemy ships in the middle of space combat. Our intelligence suggests these entities think collectively, Morrison continued. If we can disrupt their coordination by forcing them to deal with multiple different threats simultaneously, we might be able to prevent their adaptation capabilities from being effective. Colonel Martinez leaned forward. General, what are our rules of engagement? Morrison's expression hardened. These entities have consumed billions of sentient beings across 17 star systems. They represent an extinction-level threat to human civilization and our galactic allies. Rules of engagement are simple. If it's part of the Devourer Collective, kill it. Use whatever methods are necessary to accomplish that objective. She looked around at her regimental commanders, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. Ladies and gentlemen, humanity has never lost a war. We don't intend to start now. Execute your deployment orders and show these entities what happens when they threaten Marine country. The communication links closed, leaving Morrison alone with her staff in the Combat Operations Center. Around her, dozens of officers coordinated the complex process of preparing 30,000 Marines for their first interstellar combat deployment. General, called Captain Rodriguez from the bridge communication system, we're receiving a priority message from Ambassador Zethkri. She's requesting permission to observe the assault from a safe distance. Morrison considered this request briefly. Having galactic observers witness human military capabilities in action would certainly send a message about Earth's role in interstellar affairs. On the other hand, those same observers would see exactly how humans conducted warfare. Tell the ambassador she's welcome to observe from the designated safe area. But make it clear that once the shooting starts, we won't be able to guarantee her safety if she gets too close. She moved to the central tactical display, watching as the task force continued its approach toward the enemy formation. In 30 minutes, the first human Marines would engage an extragalactic threat in direct combat. The outcome would determine not just the fate of the consumed star systems, but humanity's future relationship with the entire galactic community. Master Sergeant Stone approached with final equipment reports. General, all units report ready for combat deployment. Weapons systems checked, powered armor operational, tactical nuclear devices armed, and ready. The Marines are asking if there's anything special they should know about fighting these aliens. Morrison looked at the display showing the Devourer formation. Hundreds of organic ships moving through space with unnatural coordination, consuming everything in their path, and adapting to every weapon used against them. Tell them these aliens have never fought Marines before, she replied. That should be enough. The tactical displays began showing real-time movement as the three Marine regiments moved into position. Drop ships launched from their carriers, fighter squadrons formed escort formations, and assault vessels began their final approach to combat range. General, reported Major Park, the enemy formation is beginning to react to our presence. They're consolidating their positions and moving to intercept our approach vectors. Morrison watched the alien movement patterns with interest. The Devourers were responding exactly as predicted, treating the approaching human force as another conventional military threat to be analyzed and countered. They were about to learn differently. All units, this is General Morrison, she announced over the fleet communication system. You are cleared for weapons free. Engage the enemy and show them what Marines can do. On the tactical display, she watched as three separate groups of human ships began their approach toward an enemy that had never been defeated. The Marine assault was about to begin, and with it, humanity's first test in the fires of interstellar warfare. The Devourers had adapted to every opponent they had faced, but they had never faced an opponent that specialized in making adaptation impossible. The first indication that something had gone wrong with the Devourer's adaptation protocols came when Sergeant Elena Rodriguez drove her powered fist through what appeared to be a control membrane on the surface of their largest bioship, instead of the energy-based defensive systems they had grown accustomed to countering. The organic structure was suddenly facing 1,200 pounds of powered armor moving at 40 kilometers per hour. Rodriguez had been a Marine for 8 years, serving in conflicts across human space that most civilians never heard about. She had trained for zero-gravity combat, hostile environment assault, and every conceivable variation of interstellar warfare. But standing on the outer hull of an alien bioship 12 kilometers long, surrounded by the swirling energies of the Kepler Nebula, she was definitely experiencing something new. First squad, sound off, she ordered through her suit communications. The responses came back quickly, her Marines checking in from positions across the bioship's hull. They had successfully landed on the enemy structure, but that was just the beginning of their mission. Rodriguez here, reported Corporal James Mitchell. I've got eyes on what looks like a weapons cluster about 200 meters to your east. It's definitely organic, but it's pointed toward our task force. Rodriguez activated her tactical display, seeing the positions of her squad members scattered across the alien hull. Around them, the space battle raged as human ships engaged the smaller Devourer units. But here on the surface of the enemy mothership, the war had become intensely personal. Copy that, Mitchell. Plant your charges and move to the next target. Remember, we're not here to study these things. We're here to kill them. She moved across the bioship's surface with the enhanced agility provided by her powered armor, using magnetic clamps to maintain contact with the hull. The surface beneath her feet pulsed with an organic rhythm that suggested the entire structure was alive, aware, and probably very unhappy about the uninvited guests crawling across its hide. 300 meters away, Corporal Sarachon was discovering that Devourer bioships had internal structures that were part nervous system, part machine shop, and part nightmare. She had successfully breached the hull using thermite charges, creating an opening large enough for a Marine in powered armor to squeeze through. "This is Chun," she reported over the tactical communication net. "I'm inside the primary structure. It's biological. Everything is biological. The walls are pulsing, there are fluid conduits running everywhere, and I think the floor is breathing." Rodriguez acknowledged the report while planting her own explosive charges on what appeared to be a sensor cluster. The Devourer technology was unlike anything in human experience, but the mission remained the same: find critical systems and destroy them. Chin, what's your assessment of structural integrity? Can these things be brought down with conventional explosives? Affirmative, Sergeant. The internal structure appears to be based on organic supports rather than metallic frameworks. Properly placed charges should cause catastrophic failure. Rodriguez smiled grimly inside her helmet. Marines have been blowing things up for centuries, and the principles remain the same regardless of whether the target was made of steel or alien flesh. 2 kilometers away, the space battle was developing in ways that defied every tactical manual ever written. Colonel Martinez watched from the bridge of the TFS Normandy as her Marines engaged Devourer bioships in close combat, while fighter squadrons strafed smaller alien units with kinetic weapons. Status report from 1st Battalion, she ordered. Major Thompson, her battalion commander currently leading the assault on the enemy flanks, responded immediately. "Colonel, the aliens don't know how to react to close assault tactics. They keep trying to use energy weapons to push us back, but our kinetic systems are punching right through their defenses." The tactical display showed the battle developing across multiple vectors. Human forces were engaging the Devourers at ranges varying from several thousand kilometers to direct contact, preventing the alien collective from developing unified countermeasures. "What about casualties?" Martinez asked, lighter than projected. These entities seem to be designed to fight opponents who maintain formation and use energy weapons. They're not equipped to deal with Marines who get close and use explosives. Martinez nodded, watching as the tactical display updated with real-time combat reports. The human approach was proving effective precisely because it was so different from anything the Devourers had encountered before. Aboard the TFS Leviathan, General Morrison was coordinating the overall battle while monitoring individual unit reports. The tactical situation was developing faster than anyone had anticipated, with human forces achieving objectives that the Galactic Council had considered impossible. General, reported Colonel Hendricks, 2nd Regiment has successfully neutralized 3 medium-sized bioships using direct assault tactics. 3rd Regiment's orbital drops have put Marines aboard 4 enemy vessels, with successful penetration of their internal structures. Morrison studied the real-time tactical display, seeing her Marines scattered across dozens of enemy ships, fighting battles that range from ship-to-ship combat to hand-to-hand fighting inside alien biostructures. What's our overall assessment of enemy capabilities? Major Park looked up from her intelligence station, her expression showing both professional satisfaction and genuine amazement. General, these entities appear to have no effective counter for close combat operations. Their adaptation protocols are designed to analyze and counter energy-based weapons and formation tactics. They're completely unprepared for Marines conducting direct assault operations. Morrison nodded, but her attention was focused on a different section of the tactical display. The largest Devourer bioship, the structure that appeared to be the central node of their collective consciousness, was showing signs of significant damage from Marine assault operations. "Give me a direct communication link to Sergeant Rodriguez's squad," she ordered. "They're closest to what appears to be the enemy command structure." The communication link activated, carrying the sound of combat and the distinctive noise of explosives detonating against organic material. "Rodriguez here, General," came the sergeant's voice, slightly distorted by combat conditions. "Sergeant, what's your assessment of the primary target?" "General, we've planted charges on multiple critical systems. The structure is definitely alive, and it's definitely not happy about what we're doing to it. I think we're hurting the whole collective by damaging this ship." Morrison studied the tactical display, seeing how the smaller Devourer units were beginning to show coordination problems as the Marines continued their assault on the mothership. "Sergeant, I'm authorizing use of tactical nuclear devices. Can your people clear the target area?" "Negative, General. We're too deep inside the structure for safe withdrawal. But we can deliver the devices directly to what appears to be the central nervous system. If we can detonate nukes inside this thing, I think we can kill it." Morrison felt the weight of command in that moment. Sergeant Rodriguez was volunteering to conduct a mission that would almost certainly result in the death of her entire squad, but which might end the threat that had consumed 17 star systems. "Sergeant, understand that this would be a one-way mission." "Copy that, General. But if we can stop these things from consuming any more systems, it's worth it. Marines adapt and overcome, right?" Morrison looked around the Combat Operations Center, seeing her staff monitoring the battle that was raging across the Kepler Nebula. Thousands of human military personnel were engaged in humanity's first interstellar war, fighting an enemy that had destroyed every previous opponent. And they were winning. "Sergeant Rodriguez, you are authorized to use any means necessary to complete your mission. Give those aliens a message from the human race." "Copy that, General." Rodriguez out. On the tactical display, Morrison watched as the small indicators representing Rodriguez's squad moved deeper into the enemy bioship. Around them, the space battle continued as Marine units systematically destroyed Devourer vessels using tactics that the aliens had never encountered and couldn't adapt to. 20 minutes later, the Kepler Nebula was illuminated by a series of nuclear explosions that propagated through the largest bioship's internal structure. The resulting detonation was visible from light years away as the enemy mothership collapsed in on itself, its death scream somehow audible across the vacuum of space. With the destruction of their central node, the smaller Devourer units lost coordination immediately. Some fled toward the galactic rim. Others simply stopped functioning altogether. Within 6 hours, The threat that had consumed 17 star systems had been eliminated by 30,000 human Marines using weapons and tactics that were primitive by galactic standards. General Morrison stood in the Combat Operations Center, watching as her Marines completed mop-up operations throughout the nebula. The victory was complete, but it had come at a cost. Sergeant Rodriguez and her squad had given their lives to deliver the decisive blow, joining the ranks of Marines who had died in service to something larger than themselves. "General," reported Colonel Hendricks, "Ambassador Zeth Kree is requesting permission to board the Leviathan. She says the Galactic Council wants to discuss humanity's new status immediately." Morrison looked out at the debris field that had once been an extinction-level threat, now being cleared by Marine engineering units. In the distance, she could see the approach vectors of Galactic Council ships, coming to witness what human military power could accomplish. "Tell the ambassador she's welcome aboard," Morrison replied. "And Colonel, make sure she understands that this is what happens when you ask Marines for help. We don't do limited engagements or diplomatic solutions. We identify the enemy, and we destroy them completely." As the tactical displays showed the complete elimination of Devourer forces throughout the affected region, Morrison allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. For 3 centuries, humanity had been told they were too primitive for galactic society. Today, that primitive violence had saved the galaxy. The smoke was finally clearing, and when it did, the universe would see humanity not as primitive barbarians to be managed and controlled, but as the warriors who had emerged when civilization needed them most. The Galactic Council would never again question whether humans deserved a place among the stars. They had earned it with blood, fire, and the kind of stubborn courage that only came from a species that had learned to survive against impossible odds.